Hey everyone, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Scott Mantz. It is my honor, my pleasure, my excitement to introduce our guest of honor, the legend, James Brolin. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation Career Conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well,
I'm here and I'm in Malibu looking out at the ocean while I'm talking to you. It's a pretty easygoing day. Thank you guys for the invite. I haven't talked too much about myself for the last couple of years. You know, if you're not forced to, it's repetitious.
Well, we are going to really get into your career, and I'm actually glad that you haven't done much talking over these last couple of years, because that's just going to make this conversation really, really fresh. And I guess the first question that I have for you, James, is what made you want to become an actor in the first place?
I think the fact that I was so unsuited for it that I wanted to kill the dragon, you know, because I can remember as a young fella, I had a friend with a great sense of humor and a love of characters that we saw in the movies. And the one I would dwell on when I was 7 to 10, I think, was Quasimodo. And, that started a whole thing for several years. But I can remember, I think I was about 14 years old when I got up in an English class to give a book report and sat down shaking, and I couldn't function in front of people. I tried it again. Then I joined a play, which I was a spear chucker in this play. And I left before the show started. I left the grounds. That's how traumatic it was. So consequently, as The Outsiders, the book The Outsiders says, I got my 10,000 hours in of horror in training. And I used to go to sometimes 5 different coaches a week and classes, trying to overcome the fact that I was going to be killed on stage. I just knew it. And, the more you do it, the less it hurts. That's all. And even today, I must say, I get the collywobbles on the first day. Then it goes away. These are the best days of my life at work, I must say, other than birth of my children or marriages,
Well, when you were in those early years, those formative years, James, when the acting bug really lit your fuse,
yeah,
who were some of the early mentors, the inspirations, like the people that you looked up to that gave you just great advice about acting that you just never forgot and use to this day?
Yeah, I must say my first outing, I was signed at Fox when I was almost 20.
Yep.
And I was there for 7 years, and I was dubbing other actors' voices in big movies, and not much was really happening for a couple of years. And I got a job on, it was an Air Force bomber show, a weekly network show. And Dick Donner was the director. And after having done another show where the director was so abusive that I wanted to quit, and the leading lady came over and put her arm around me and said, I know how you feel. It's going to go away. You'll be out of here. They're going to make sure you look good. And so, at that point, I'm thinking, I'm getting all this training. I've gotten through the worst of it, and it is so horrible at work. And then I met Dick Donner, who completely changed everything around and started even to teach me what directing was all about.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. And this was, I would say 1962. And I was 21. By the way, I missed the fact that I had a dark room when I was 10. I was fascinated with photography. And my dad used to run a lot of 16 millimeter film. And So by the time, and I was making pinhole cameras with tape and boxes, and literally buying sheet film and developing it. It was just pretty good for a 10, 12, 13-year-old. And then I bought my first Super 8 camera at 15 and said, I'm going to be a filmmaker. Never thinking that I'd be in front of the lens. You know?
Yeah.
So, not that I've directed a lot, but I've directed about 30 hours of TV and 3 movies. And would love to do more. I have 4 projects now up for financing, but good luck after the pandemic. We'll see. There's a lot of product out, but and I really think I got some viable scripts, but so far, the financing thing, nobody thinks so but me. So anyway, years later, Dick Donner, who just died, I'm so sad, the sweetest guy, and directed Josh and Goonies early on. I think maybe that was Josh's first outing with an agent, sending him off. And suddenly he's in a Spielberg picture with Dick Donner directing, which is still, still a cause, a viable, In fact, people ask me, they'll say to me, I don't know why they'll say, saw you in Goonies. Somehow they get us mixed up. If you go on my site on IMDb, you'll see, I think what they thought was me and is Christopher Plummer in a suit.
I saw that. I'm like, that's not James Brolin.
If you watch the film, I'm in it with he and Shirley MacLaine, but I guess, a lot of young people running things, they're not aware of what the old fogies are doing.
Well, you're working more than anyone, and it all started really in the early 60s, when you were doing, stuff like contracted by Fox, and you were on TV shows like, I think Bus Stop was your first TV show.
Yeah, that was the one that was so horrible. The director was so abusive, not only to everybody, but especially to me. At least I thought.
Well, then you were on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and you were on Batman 3 times. I mean, what was it like jumping around to all those like classic shows like Patty Duke and all that stuff when you were really finding your way as a young actor?
It always felt few and far between. That's the thing, is that it sounded like jumping around, but weeks would go by and I'm going, you guys are paying me $93 a week. What are you going to do with it? I mean, seriously, I would net $93 a week off of 135 gross. I think that was in the first year. And then, you get 5% pay raises, but it's more money than I ever had because I would net parking at Lowry's and Dino's on the Strip of $42 a week and dinner out the back door. That's a real actor's sentence.
Yeah. That waiting tables, and I hear you.
Yeah.
But also during that time, you were got to be in a couple of big films. I mean, really just getting your way going, like Our Man Flynn and one of my favorite films, Fantastic Voyage. What were those like?
Well, it was really nice being around really talented cameramen. And, I was interested in lighting and camera. So everybody down the line. And, actors come in different sizes and shapes. Some of them are soapboxers and others are really, really nice people. And I would say the majority of good friends that I've met were probably actors, because I was around them a lot. But, of course, I would say rather than gregarious, I would choose to be a loner, go do something, read a magazine, go study something, go learn something, rather than just pal around with a bunch of people. But I really did enjoy actors and thought they were smarter than I had anticipated, especially the ones that seemed to move ahead, and there were exceptions.
When you were doing those shows or those early films, were there actors who were already really established that you met and that you kind of picked their brain a little, or that gave you any kind of advice? Like, I don't know, like any legends of that time that you got to meet and be like, that's who I want to be when I grow up.
Well, we were all fascinated with Brando and James Dean early on back then. And when I was 18, I got a job with a friend of my dad's who was producing a picture called Mutiny on the Bounty. So I was cast in the prologue and epilogue as Brando's son, and I went off to Tahiti for a year. Wow. And was in and out. They changed directors 3 times. They had many versions of the script with the prologue and epilogue out. It was supposed to be years later on Pitcairn Island, me telling the story of what happened in this movie. And I'm sure they were, like 2-3 minute increments if I was lucky. And of course, I was so green at 18 or 19. But I got over there well before Brando and kind of got to know him and kind of got to watch it. And he was the kind of guy that was good at everything, but he would never show you unless he practiced it at home until he was the best of all of them. And I'm talking about Tahitian dancing, which was rigorous and tough. I'm talking about walking on stilts, which was a big thing in Tahiti, how high stilts you can walk around the set on. And just by observation, I learned a lot about a guy who was in the beginning kind of godlike. And then I realized, okay, I see. You figure out what you want to do, you get real good at it, and you go out there and you show them, I was born like this,
Well,
and I got that feeling from the guy. I was never a person that ever asked for an autograph, but I was always curious about anybody that was really good at anything and why,
Well, in 1969, talk about your big break, Marcus Welby, MD, Dr. Stephen Kiley. Like, what do you remember about your audition for this role that carried you through 7 seasons, 4 Emmy nominations, and an Emmy win?
Yeah, and the Emmy win was for the pilot of Odd Things. So I was prepared because I don't know of anybody that's ever won an Emmy for a pilot.
Wow.
Everybody's getting used to you, But I can remember a technique that I used to get that Emmy. There was a crying scene, and I used Visine a lot. And, it doesn't matter how. And I'm basically a method actor, but if it ain't working, do whatever you can to. And also, I was film-wise. I knew how to trick the camera from early on. I started at 15. And so I realized they're going to cut this and cut that. And that helped me a lot in how I began to present myself. The tough thing was memorizing the lines and just getting up there with all these people. And then once you, as I say, I call them the collywobbles, but once you get up there and get past them, it's amazing how you can kind of surprise yourself, You're preparing, but in a way you're going, I want to go way on beyond my preparation and see what the hell happens. I want to drop the guard while the camera's running.
How do you remember your lines?
How? Well, I'll tell you, it's pure rote and repetition to the point. And, I'm not alone in some great actors like that. So I don't feel bad that it doesn't come to me easy, but I have been where I'm about to start a picture and I've been studying heavily for 3 to 4 weeks and it ain't going in. Mm-hmm. And everybody laughs, but I say, I'm going to Bakersfield. So I get in my truck and I drive. It's 2.5 hours up to Bakersfield to have lunch. And while I'm driving, I look at a line and then mull it over and say it out loud. And for some reason, while I'm driving, there's an alpha state that I heard this word, alpha state, where you go where you're most adept at learning. And it happens to me when I'm driving. So 4 to 5 hours of driving, I will prepare myself for, each line all the way down. And then later, once they rhythmically sound right and real to me, then I'll begin to apply them to a scene. It's never a problem. It's just the assembly of words that I can't. And even now, as a director, I am so easy on actors. I say that, the script girl will say, well, that's not right. The line is such as that. I said, no, let them talk. Tell me what you're trying to tell me. And okay, print it. We're moving on. I learned that from Eastwood, because he's so easygoing about everything. One take, and a lot of that stuff doesn't matter. Who you're trying to please, as long as you understand what they're talking about, and we feel real about it, and they feel real about it.
Yeah, Eastwood. He just kind of just says, "Whenever you're ready." He doesn't even say action.
No.
Yeah,
And cut is, I don't know what we're doing standing around here.
Wow. Well, so but getting to play a character like that. So this is like the first time you're on a series and you're working with like Robert Young, and you're getting to build like an arc of a character over a season and then another season, and that went on for 7 seasons. So how much did you learn as an actor getting to do your first long running series, which, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but wasn't Marcus Welby MD the first #1 hit series that ABC ever had?
Boy, that I never heard. But what I did hear that was a first was we were #1 within the first 6 weeks.
Wow.
And we remained there consistently for at least a year and a half. I mean, you can check on that stuff, but it was a crazy phenomenon. And, everybody kept saying, well, you legitimized the motorcycle. And I thought, well,
yep.
Big deal, but it's kind of true, everybody on a motorcycle in most people's minds was an outlaw. And I was a guy with a mode of transportation.
Yeah.
Before that, I'll tell you what prepared me. Fox News Studios in South Africa, and it was like, they would make those in the old movie. You go to the movie and you see black and white news from all over the world before the movie.
Yep.
Anyway, that's what that was used for, and now it wasn't used much. So they said, okay, we got, and this was 66 or 67. We got 300,000. We got Jackie Bissett, which we just signed, and Jim Brolin. We'd like to do a remake of Pickup on South Street at the studios over there. And I played the Richard Widmark role. And of course, watched it, 40 times. And there's a little bit of a ripoff of Richard, trying to be Richard Widmark, but it's a horrible movie. But I'm fascinated on how I jumped into the lead of a movie. And I'm still fascinated that I could pull it off as well as I did, even though the movie is really, really bad. The director loved to hide his scotch in the toilet in the
wow.
In the tank in the back. We'd go in there and go, where is he getting this stuff? And finally somebody lifted the top of the tank, and here was the bottle there every day. So we, Jackie and I, a lot had to fend for ourselves, of course she had a nice career, and it was a real breakthrough for me to say, okay, now you handle this is what it's like to be the lead in a movie, and, if you get a smaller part, generally they try and push it into 2 or 3 days, 1 or 2 days. So you got 2, 3 scenes, one right after. So being in a movie is just the same, only every day for a month or two,
Well, with Marcus Welby, after 7 seasons, like how did you feel at the end of that run as an actor? Like, how much more confidence did you have moving forward after all this experience, 7 seasons, 100, how many episodes? I mean, that must have been just such a massive growth for you as an actor.
Well, I asked out after doing that film with Bissett and waiting a year. I asked out. That was my 7th year at Fox, but I asked out. I said, you guys, I want to be in the movie business. You guys aren't doing anything. Can I get free? And so they said, yeah, sure. Let me out. And 3 weeks later, I was signed kind of as a contract player over at Universal. Mm-hmm. 3 weeks after that, they started talking to me about doing a test for the Marcus Welby pilot. Yeah, great. Okay. And we had the best DP and the best crew. A lot of times it's just also, as a matter of fact, now they just put you up against a white wall and that's your test.
Yeah.
Back then it was a real crew with real sets. Anyway, the thing was 3 days after I did the test and they said, you got this role, and it was, as I say, a great crew and Robert Young and myself. And it just felt really like a film, felt ritzy, it felt like, oh, this is great. They've made it so much easier for me to deliver what I have to deliver because of their professionality. And, I feel this way about all movie crew members. Anybody that doesn't pull their weight gets on a don't hire list. Right. And so you've got nothing but the best guys you've ever met on a construction site. And a lot of them were, and working for contractors, building houses and apartment buildings. But they were so good and so giving. You pay them 100%, they give you 140%. Say, yeah, I thought you might need that. And they're paid very well for that in the end. Sure. But it's been being raised. I was raised in 14 different houses. My dad would build a house. He'd frame it, put Visqueen over it, and our beds would be moved in there. So at 5 a.m, the sun's in our eyes, and I was a cleanup kid for 25 to 50 cents an hour. He was penurious. And I learned to work early on. I worked for Hansworth Bicycles in Beverly Hills and Westwood. And as I grew up, I worked for a plumber. I opened gas stations at 15. So I always never minded lifting the weight,
Sure.
And as a matter of fact, here's an example. As I was ready for college, he said, you go down to UCLA, however you get there, or Santa Monica City College, and I'll pay for your lunch and gas and any major expenses. I said, oh, great. So I started college. I actually I spent some time at SC, and then I think I was at UCLA Extension. That's where you pay extra money for your class.
Yeah, I know. I think that, sure.
And he says, here's how much you owe me so far. And I said, what? He said, this is what I've loaned you so far. And I said, you loaned me? Oh, I get it. So anyway, I never borrowed a nickel from anybody after that since then.
Wow.
I would go to work in a liquor store packing shelves or whatever. And actually, I went to unemployment once and went through whatever you go through. And I said, no, this does not feel good to me.
Yeah.
I'm asking somebody for free money. They're treating me horribly for doing it. And so I never went back. I got a job. I got one job after the other, And I think if I was going to advise any actors, I would say do the same damn thing. However many jobs you can work, you're going to learn from everybody. Mm-hmm. And at the gas station, this was back in the days when you even cleaned the windshield wipers. Not only the windshield, you check the air in the tires, you check the oil. That was for filling up with gas.
Yeah.
No charge, no tips. That was just the way it was done. It's a lot different now.
Well, like when there are so many actors who try to make the transition from TV to film.
Yeah.
So the last couple of years of Marcus Welby, you had already started doing some pretty major films. In fact, when I was growing up, like one of the first movies I ever saw in a theater. And kudos to my parents for being forward thinking and taking me to grown up movies and not the Disney stuff. But Jim, one of the first movies I saw in a theater was Westworld. And that, like, look how ahead of its time that movie was. I mean, you got a whole new TV series based on it. But what was that like for you, like working with Richard Benjamin on such a, like, and of course, Yul Brynner. I mean, that movie is still amazing. I rewatched it to prep for this conversation.
Oh, really? Yes. Oh, it's funny because, Our Man Flint, when I did Our Man Flint, I went from doing a day or two and meeting Jimmy Coburn to Jimmy Coburn being third or fourth down in a picture I was starring in 1981. Mm-hmm. It all kind of flips around,
Yeah.
But when I signed up with Universal before I got the pilot, in negotiating with whatever little negotiating I had, I got $500 a week when I started there. I told them that I was in the movie business and that's what I wanted to concentrate on, right? So after the first or second, the first year of Welby being so, I said, where's my movie? We're off for five months. Where's my movie? Yeah. And they sent a couple of executives down and asked me to come into the cafeteria, the
commissary.
Commissary.
Yeah.
And they sat, and suddenly after talking peacefully, this young executive brought out my contract onto the table and circled in red twice. Here's what you signed. Here's what you agreed to, buddy. Well, I tell you, I'm a real generally easygoing guy, but I'm shocked that I did, and there's 200 people in the room. I'm shocked I didn't turn that table over and walk out of there. Wow. Just because of the attitude. Would have been a good scene in a movie.
Would have been.
Yeah, but it was real. And I didn't, and I kept quiet. Well, oddly enough, I was with the best guys at the Morris office at the time, and I got a call from a guy. It was Michael Crichton for Westworld. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Went over, met with him. He said, great, we love you for this movie. I'm trying to think of which was first, because that was at MGM. And then the following year, they wanted me back to do another one. And I think that was Walter Seltzer with Skyjacked.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. With Charlton Heston as the pilot.
Yep.
And Seltzer said, we want to have the least likely guy, the nicest guy to hijack an airliner in town. And that, we think that's Jim Brolin. So I did that one, and it did very well. And of course, Westworld is hot stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe that commissary thing where I almost turned over the table was right after those two, because in that department, Universal wasn't doing anything. And that's when I did Gable and Lombard. And I still believe to this day, Frank Price is still around. He can look at this 5 times, but I still believe that Frank Price put that movie in the toilet after 14 days.
Why you say that?
Because it went in the toilet. It never got any advertising. It never got it, and it's Universal. They make a movie, they splash it everywhere,
Yeah.
They literally pulled it really quickly. And that was, Sidney Furie came to me and he says, I think you can play Clark Gable. And they don't. They want Steve McQueen and Ally McGraw to play Clark Gable,
Sure, right.
And anyway, Sidney said, no, I'm not making the movie unless it's Jim Brolin and Jill Clayburgh. And so we made that picture. And actually, I never tried to play anybody I saw, any other person. And I told Sidney, I don't think I can pull this off. And he says, listen, He said, I'm going to put you in tomorrow morning, be here at 10 o'clock. I got 2 Gable movies. I just want you to watch. And every day this week, you're going to watch 2 Gable. You're going to watch 10 movies. And it was about Wednesday that he walked in the screening room and said, what do you think? And I said, I just got a little inkling, little feel. I moved a certain way that's I'm not used to. And I knew that was kind of the beginning of a possible key. And at that point I go, you know, with him behind me saying, you can do this, how do you turn this down? You know?
Absolutely. Right.
I always told Joss, what you don't do is more important than what you do. But the fact is during my career, and you can go over all of these 140 films or whatever, and 17 years of primetime stuff, where I had to pay the rent. That's a real danger where you start living above with a woman who has big tastes and 3 kids. And then you got to take a job that is going to ruin your career. And that's pretty much true. Josh has been pretty careful about those, but we all love to work, and he has a great career now.
Oh,
wonderful career. And I think I told him that because I knew I had already screwed up pretty bad by taking things I should have held out for, you know.
Well,
it's like right now, I was offered a series 2 weeks ago, and I was basically off to Europe from June to January. And I said, no, this is not right. This ain't going to work, kids, you know. Not, it just wasn't on paper. It ain't on paper. Don't fail with them.
If it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage.
That's right.
Well, Jim, I want to ask you about Clark Gable. I mean, like you're playing Clark Gable. Like, what was your point of connection when you finally moved forward that made you go, I can do this? And how challenging was it for you to play Clark Gable? And how did you and Jill Clayburgh as Carol Lombard like help each other, elevate each other?
Well, she was always, you know, very helpful. She never, you know, I mean, some actors you can feel there's a competition in a scene, and sometimes that's very helpful. But many times they're there to make you look better, and I'm there to make them look better than they ever have. That's always my, to me, the difference between me as an actor and a director, and it probably, maybe it's not a smart thought, but that's me. It's the same thing. I want to make you just really great. And I guess subliminally, I know it's going to make me look, it's going to bounce right back off of you onto me, you know. But the best times, and there've been, my kids, I think, figured out I've gone to work 9,500 days now. The best times have been most of those days, you know. Wow. And even difficult days are malleable, and then the next day is fine. You know, a horrible day. I've never even missed a day of work because I wouldn't let anybody. I'd take a bunch of awful pills, and I wouldn't let anybody know I was sick. You know, I mean, it wasn't anything that was catching, but terrible flu type colds and things like that. Never missed a day of work, I don't think, on anything, regardless of film. And I think part of that was I didn't want to miss anything, you know. If you love what you do, Jim, you don't have to work. Like that's the thing. That's true. That's absolutely true. But when it came to Clark Gable, like even to this day, where does your performance as Clark Gable rank in your favorite performances that you've done over your career? Maybe most fun I've ever had, close to the top. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean anything to anybody else. But to me, every day at work with Jill and especially with Sid going, God, you nailed it, you know, whether you did or not. You know, your ego's always in there, isn't it? And also, he would give me things to work toward as we shot that it would be bad. Sidney likes to shoot also in You know, from the beginning of the show through to the end. Most times don't. Yeah, chronological. You don't have that luxury, of course. Most times you're in one location, you shoot everything, and he just tells them in the beginning, I'm going to move around and it's going to be chronological, and you're going to watch these actors grow up during this movie, And have you ever seen the Ipcris File? His original, he won
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Film. Yeah. And anyway, what else did I do with? Oh, I did Night of the Juggler with him later on, which I broke my foot during shooting in Central Park. They had there's white lines along the roads through Central Park, and they put they nailed a 2x4 on the white line and painted it white so that the cab could jump the curb easier. Well, they forgot it was there, and the next day I'm running and I kicked the end of this 2x4, and broke my foot, right? So I'm down for a month.
Oh, right.
And Sidney goes, this film isn't right for me. And he quit. And another director ended up. But I learned a lot about shooting with. Sidney loves shooting with long lenses and getting the cameras back in a building. You can't even see the camera, and he's, so that leaves your depth of field very narrow. Your eyes are in focus, and everything else is soft. So his movies have a kind of a fantasy look to them.
Well, also around this time, so 1978. Again, like these are my formative years growing up in Philadelphia, where I'm from. And one of my favorite movies to this very day. Are you ready? Yeah. Capricorn One.
It was a big hit.
It is a big hit. It still holds up. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that recently, but if you haven't, I would advise you to watch it again, because that movie has it all. And it is so provocative. And I'm surprised no one's remade it, because it's such a good movie. But what was it like for you? Like Charles Brubaker, is like the voice of reason in that film. Yeah. And you're working with all these amazing actors, Sam Waterston. I mean, Hal Holbrook, that monologue he gives about why he's faking the Mars landing. And then you're off in the desert. You have to eat a rattlesnake. I mean, that was a pretty grueling performance, and it's such a great movie. But what was it like for you to have to play such a grueling role like Brubaker?
Well, at the time I wasn't, listen, I was raised within 5 miles of the Beverly Hills Hotel, but there were rattlesnakes and coyotes, and my mother would beat the deer off her garden every day, and it was up by Mulholland. It was kind of a different world in those days. I don't know if you've seen pictures of the Beverly Hills Hotel with no trees in sight anywhere. It was desert in Beverly Hills.
Yeah,
but it must have been a microcosm where they were able to, without bringing in a lot of water, they were able to grow trees eventually, and it became what it was. But anyway, I lived up in the mountain area where, the weekends, us kids would step over the rattlesnakes and camp out on the weekends, and then my dad bought 2 horses when I was about 14 or 15. So I got used to horses. And then in the middle of Welby, this was 73, I bought a ranch up in, and I had a ranch in Winnetka with 6 acres and about 8 head of horses. But I bought this ranch up in Paso Robles near the Hearst Castle, and sold everything and moved lock, stock, and barrel up there.
Wow.
And I figured, I'll figure this out, and they said, what in the world? We're in the middle of a hit series. What in the world are you doing? But we're going to move all your work into 3 days a week, and then you'll have the weekend off. So what a perfect answer, right?
Man, wow, that's clout, buddy.
And I've been a pilot for over 40 years now, and there was an airfield on this ranch. So, and 2 lakes. I'm a bass fisherman. I ended up raising and training horses. I had 60 head of Simmental cattle that I was breeding up. I bought half breeds. These are all pretty expensive, but I was literally wanted to be in business. And, who knows, maybe I'd have pulled out of this if, I couldn't pull out, but I wanted that to work. And I've been in a lot of different businesses that didn't work out, but, they're all life experiences that were. But anyway, I moved up there, and I would come down for 3 to 4 days a week and stay with my brother. He had a great house right near Universal. And that was another part of my life, and that's when I did some rebuilding on the ranch and looked around to talk to contractors, and they just didn't, because I'm from a contracting family, they didn't speak my language. So I got 4 young guys that were architectural graduates from Cal Poly, all smoking grass every day, all pretty hip. And they went to work for me, right? One of them became an architect, and then we decided to start a lumber company together. And we're in our 46th year now together. I still am in the lumber business. So that's work. But because of him, he's running it,
There you go.
Yeah. And we started also designing and building spec houses too. So, but I'm not in that business. I'm not in any other business. I've just tried them all, and it's been kind of fun and wonderful. And I learned so much from those other things. Just to bring back to what I really love to do is, if I could just get that next film financed, I want to put together a film that everybody loves,
Well, hopefully those financiers are watching this conversation.
Oh, well, yeah. And if it doesn't happen, I'm fine.
Listen, you're more than fine. But what was that? When Capricorn One came out, I mean, that was a big, massive hit. But it was also, like I said, I mean, for you as an actor, just like, what was it like making that movie with Peter Hyams, the director?
Well, first of all, Hyams is very adamant about what he wants to do. You don't feel like you're ever lost because he has figured it out already for you. And all you can do is really commit to what he wants. Well, everything he wanted was really terrific. And including those, the aerial things with the biplane and the 2 choppers up and down. He was in one of those shooting. I mean, he jumps right in too, Do you know that he was a cameraman in New York for one of the networks when they did the moonshot? And people kept saying, whoa, this is impossible. Everybody, all the way down to somebody said, well, everybody knows the moon is just made of green cheese anyway, And so anyway, he said, this is really, and he started writing. I don't know for the first time, but he started writing this script in New York. A couple of years later, moved to LA and got this film financed. And it's one of the really great films. You're right. I was lucky to be in it. I remember the day they said, okay, we're going to do the rattlesnake thing on Thursday. What do you want to do about that? Well, my dad looked for the Lost Dutchman in New York. We had rattlesnakes all over in Mulholland. I said, so I'll tell you what, you're going to have to cut this thing open, make it look real, but go and get some some monkfish or something that stays together and put it in the center. And then we'll put some raspberry jam on it. And that's what I will eat, the raw fish.
Oh, man. Wow.
Yeah. So that's what it was. And, but my dad had actually barbecued rattlesnakes that were killed actually in Benedict Canyon there. And also in Arizona. We lived in Mesa, Arizona at one point because he was looking for the Lost Dutchman. My dad graduated from, his parents came out from not Boulder, Colorado, but Colorado Springs, started a confectionery company in Pasadena, made cakes and cookies and everything. And then his dad died of heart failure because he ate everything he made. But he went to Caltech there because it was the closest school, but it was the #1 school in the nation, right? So he's pulled out of Caltech as a star student to try to redesign the DC-3 at Santa Monica. And they were all made at Santa Monica and at Santa Monica Airport. And they were falling apart vibrationally, and he figured out what to do about this. Then he sent his mother on a trip back east in one of the deliveries, and it crashed into the mountain at Flagstaff.
Oh,
so
wow.
he lost father and mother soon, and he never talked much about that. But I think that's where I spent a lot of time at Santa Monica Airport in those days watching these planes go in and out. So by the time I was 18, I was coming up with, whatever it was, $20 an hour back then, and now it's $200-300, But been flying ever since then. Then he got out of that business and started for Whammo. He developed the hula hoop.
Oh, nice.
And I forget what other things they made a lot of money at. And then he started building houses one at a time. And I lived in 14 houses by the time I graduated that he would be building while we lived in them.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the year after Capricorn One, you had another big hit, Jim, and that was the Amityville Horror. And that is another movie, still scary to this day. Get out. And for you to play George Lutz, I mean, you really have to go deep and dark into a character like that. What was your point of connection to play him? And what was it like for you to be in that headspace for the duration of that shoot?
Well, I can't say that I got to hang around anybody like that, but in a way you do, and you draw from people that just can't be excited about life. We all know people like that. That just something wrong all the time, right? Also, I met George Lutz, and that kind of ruined everything because I wasn't sure whether he was telling the truth about this. And I talked to his kids, and they had the story so right on. They almost used the same words if you talk to the kids separately, like they were schooled at this. And, later they moved to San Diego, and they say their house filled with rattlesnakes, so they're on to their next book. It sounded,
oh, boy,
right?
Yeah.
But nevertheless, here was a thing that everybody, the neighbors, and I drove to Amityville. I drove around the house. I drove around. It's on a keyway with water in between these streets, with a water garage on the back. And I thought, well, geez, those are really close to the other house. And but we drove around the back and looked across the waterway, and the boat garage door was painted black, and there was no way to get to it. And the house was yellow with white trim at that time, except this black door. And I thought, oh, whoa, that got me right there,
Yeah.
So, you got to, and going back, you got to remember that my first, like Jack Coslin, Bob Gist from New York, these were all method teachers. I started out learning the method, and then ended up reading Stanislavski's Building a Character, and The Actor Prepares, and all of that stuff. And basically on building a character, the book starts talking about, if you're a violin, you want to make sure you're polished and got the best strings on and just tuned so perfectly, and then go out there and show them. And that's the same with an actor. Do your sit-ups, work your voice every morning.
So did you stay in character for the duration of the shoot?
No, I don't I will crack a joke the minute they cut.
Oh, okay. I was going to say.
Wrong with me, But anybody that's worked with me will tell you that it's a joke a minute. And then the minute they yell action, it just works better for me. But I'm sure they're thinking, well, he could have done better if he'd just been concentrating,
How did the success of the film, the Amityville Horror, how did that have an impact on your career? Because I'll tell you, you're really good in this role as Lutz, but were you too good?
Oh, have you heard me talk about this before? Because you're right on. Nobody knew what to do with me for a couple of years. And one of the offers that I had was Oliver Stone. Had never directed a picture, but he wrote this picture called The Hand. And it was the only thing that came around. They said, you should read it, look at it. And it was all within the Morris office. And so I read it and I just said, this is a real stinker. This ain't going to work. This is not good for me. And the next thing I knew, it's in the news, Michael Caine is doing The Hand. And I kind of went, wait a minute, ask me again. Let me check. Right. But then, the reality is Michael Caine got away with doing everything that came across. He made a lot of money just doing everything. And he's so Michael Caine that it kind of doesn't matter,
It's true. You're right. He could do Jaws.
So believable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I sat around and the ranch really was not cheap to operate. It was all those, I had semis full of horse and cattle feed coming in, and I had these two lakes that were not down at water level, so I had to pump water up into them, and the electrical all that. So when they came to me with hotel, and that was after like 2 to 3 year wait, right?
Yeah.
And then Aaron Spelling really kind of offered me the moon as far as a comfortable salary, but all great clothes, any clothes you have ever seen, we will buy you. And I said, I want to drive a Porsche in the show. He said, well, that looks a little, I said, no, let's pencil it out. If he made this much money and he lived in the hotel, he could afford a Porsche payment. Okay, yeah, you're right. I did the same thing with Pensacola, drove a Porsche. But we penciled it out first, and they said, yeah, you're right. He could, if that's what he wanted, he could afford it. So anyway, I did that show, and that went another 140 or 50 shows.
5 seasons, yeah. How much fun was it to play Peter McDermott, especially on a show where everybody came through that hotel as a guest star? That just must have really been so every week, like it never gets stale because you have all these different actors, like legends of all kinds. So how was Hotel for you working on a series like that compared to doing Marcus Welby?
Marcus Welby, I had some advantages. I bought a big, beautiful motorhome, and they paid me $600 rent, which more than paid for the thing. And but I was the kid, and Robert Young had said, if he thinks he's going to get out of this and go make his movies, I'm going to make well, he didn't say some nice things. Anyway.
Sure.
And so when Spelling said, whatever, I said, well, the good old actors thing. What I've always wanted to do is direct. He said, oh, yeah. Oh, that's possible. I said, well, look who's directing, this guy and this guy and this guy. Some of them have quit acting, and why not be able to go back? And he said, yeah, but he said, I want you to be in the show a year so you really know what's going on. And guess what? He called me 1 year later, and he said, your year's up. He said,
want to direct?
There's 3 shows right now. Pick the one you like. We were always 3 to 5 scripts ahead, which is a very smart investment. If you don't do that nowadays, anybody that's listening, I think it's like buying a Rolls Royce and then driving around without insurance, knowing you're never going to hit anybody.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So invest in the beginning in 3 to 5 scripts and stay ahead, and you got to throw them away when you're canceled. But boy, it's good insurance, because and what I've seen since then, everybody's clamoring. Even on the day you're shooting, you're getting pages and nobody's sure. And, it's up to the editor to make sense of it. But anyway, so I started directing, and I don't know if you know, we had we only shot at the hotel in San Francisco once 1 week.
That's right. Yeah.
And then the big stage at Warner Brothers became the lobby, wall to wall. That was a lot, with a staircase going up. It was huge. And I mean, I would do things like have 5 scenes all in one take in that lobby, coming down the stairs, and these people would leave, and 5 different scenes all in one take, and not that it ended up being cut like that, but I was in my element. I would you look out the window, and I'd have reflections of a photograph in a mirror, and so you're looking out over San Francisco Bay, at the lights, and so I was really prepared for that, and I think I did 10 hours of that show.
Yep, 10 episodes. You directed.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
How did being an actor really help you as a director?
Well, like I said, I bought my first movie camera at 15, so that's all I ever thought about every time. When I was, and that's another complication. I could have been a good actor if I hadn't been looking through the lens mentally.
Right.
Trying to play a role at the same time, looking at the lighting. I knew everybody's job, and sometimes an actor is better off just doing what he does well, but I couldn't do that. It's just like all these businesses I've been in. I'm only in one of like 8 businesses now, because I failed at them basically. But God, it was so great to try everything,
Sure. You tried something different, certainly, with the following TV series, Pensacola, and that. So up to this point, so Marcus Welby, you're the actor, and then for Hotel, you got directing, and then Pensacola, you're now executive producer. So how was that whole experience, especially with working in at the air base in near San Diego? I mean, cooperation in the military and everything.
And there was a full studio down there. Stu Siegel had his studio. He had done several series down there, so it wasn't like we're going down into a strange area out of LA. All his cutting and his everything related to LA. There was an airplane that went back and forth 2-3 times a week for editing, and a lot of people working up here in Burbank. So it was amazing, actually, because he trusted me from the get-go, and I brought in 3 or 4 other directors that he had never used, and including Sidney Fury. I brought him down. We're getting old, and Sidney's not working on a picture, and came down. He ended up being their favorite director on Pensacola. So that was a really wonderful time down there.
So listen. I mean, in the early 2000s, you got to work sort of back to back with 2 great directors named Steven. First in 2000 with Traffic, Steven Soderbergh, and then 2002 with Steven Spielberg on Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, when you're like, it's been, especially because I've grown up with your career and certainly got into this business and, seeing all this changes. Like, I feel like you really learn how to adapt to the changing landscape of the business, and also, sort of playing to your strengths as you have gotten older. And both of these roles in both of these movies they're supporting roles, but they are crucial roles. So what was it about Traffic? What was it about working with Soderbergh? And Soderbergh won Best Director Academy Award for that film. But that movie is just absolutely fantastic.
Yes, it is terrific. And it was actually one of the first to deal with the cartels or any of the Mexican outlaws, wasn't it? And I loved that speech. You know, I mean, they make a real good speech there in that main scene, and you know, there was no question that I was going to do that. It's not a big role, right?
Right. No, it's not. But that scene is crucial. That's what I mean. It's
yes, and I got a lot of feedback off that one scene. It kind of taught me a lot about what you should take and what you should turn down. You know, it was very meaningful to me when I read it, and it was really meaningful to a lot of other people who got back to me and said, "Whoa, you know, killed it." You know, and you know, you work 2 months or 3 months on something and you don't kill it, and then you do a couple of days. I mean, it wasn't more than a week that I think that I was on it. And what was the other one you mentioned?
Catch Me If You Can with
Catch Me If You Can.
DiCaprio, and you know, so that's your first time working with Spielberg. That must have been.
No, actually, Spielberg did one of the first Welbys.
Oh, he did. Whoa.
Yes. Yeah. You remember he'd come in and done, remember he came in and he took an office upstairs.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For 6 months before anybody asked him, "What are you doing here? Who are you?"
That's right. Great
and
story.
Then he showed his little sneaker film with the shoelaces, the sneakers falling in love with each other. It was a, stop frame little film. And then he got a movie of the week with somebody, I forget.
A Duel.
Huh? No, but Duel. No, Duel was after.
Okay, so then that must have been, was it Night Gallery?
Yeah, he did a Night Gallery, and he also did something with a famous old movie star. And then he got up. I think we were like the third thing at Universal that he did.
Amazing.
And he was so shy that, and you know, I've said this in front of him before. He would keep his eye on the eyepiece and tell the assistant, to come over. Tell him to just move over to the left. He was afraid. He didn't know how to talk to us.
Oh, wow. Right.
Yeah. But he had this eye, and he knew, the show was great, of course. But he wasn't like any other officious director we'd ever had. And I wouldn't say, watch that guy either, because too quiet. And the next thing he's doing Duel. Fabulous film.
Yeah, that's amazing.
With no money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my kind of film too. I mean, I love that. Well, you got an old road and a bar somewhere way out in, Lancaster, and a truck.
You did your own movie like that, The Car.
I did The Car, yeah.
The car is scary.
The car actually was developed about the same time. It was written by one of my best friends in high school, artist Doug Wheeler.
Wow.
And and I ended up taking it to NBC after I did a thing called Trapped in 1972. It was the highest rated movie of the week, which Barry Diller made up the phrase "movie of the week." And we made that movie there for ABC called Trapped, and we won best movie of the year of all the television networks. Yeah.
So when Spielberg, you got to work with him after all these decades.
Yeah.
Like what was that like? Did he say, "Hey, good seeing you again," or like
No, he did that all before we started working. He was just great and said, "I want you to do this." And then Hanks, who I knew, and Leo, who I know now, I don't think, I think I may have met him in passing, but he's a wonderful guy and very kind to the world.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. But Spielberg, I was surprised after all of going from what he was to being the officious, the possibly officious, great movie maker. He was so wonderful to work for. And he was so subtle with me in his suggestions that, you know, I've worked with 300 directors, so I know, and don't tell anybody the DGA, but half of them need their membership yanked. You know, they were writers. They said, "Oh no, yeah, you're an executive producer. Go ahead and direct." And then it's the last time they directed. But yeah, there's some guys that never, well, I would say, in a nutshell, never went to an acting class. So how would they know how to talk to actors or where they're coming from? I think it's important to know where the buttons are, because they're pretty universal.
Well, the year after Catch Me If You Can, talk about a daunting, challenging role. Ronald Reagan in The Reagans.
Yeah.
How do you take a character like Ronald Reagan, who would probably be very easy to imitate, and humanize him? Like, what were the challenges for you to play Ronald Reagan?
Well, I had very early on sort of mimicked his voice, you know, "Well, Nancy and I," you know.
Pretty good.
And I had heard that, and I said it to somebody laughed, and then I would, every once in a while, when his name came up, I would do that. But that meant nothing. Years later, Craig Zaden and Neil, they, through my agent and through some friends that we knew, said, "We want Jim to play Reagan." And my first reaction was, everybody in town must have turned this down. You know,
Wow.
Why are they coming to me for this? I'm the least likely guy to do this, you know. And I, you know, eventually I went back, well, I did The Impossible once before with Gable, because I still don't quite know how I did it, except, well, I have an old saying, sitting in the shit until you don't smell it anymore.
Oh, jeez.
That's watching the Gable movies until you begin to get that way of, you know, and showing your teeth that way, and you sort of become them. And that's, you know, some actors are trained to go into a bar and sit next to a barfly, you know. In fact, most of us are, but we go and sit night after night in a bar and hang around somebody that's just so weird, and we start to take on some of their affectations. So anyway, I turned it down. I just said, no way. This is one of those things I told Josh about, you know, what you turn down is more important than what you do. They said they're coming over to the house and they're going to sit out in the driveway while I just read the first 20 minutes. Oh, I refused to read it. That's right. While I read the first 20 minutes, and I started reading it, and they're out there, and I said, "What is this guy's out there?" This guy. And then I started. After I said yes, then I said, "Yeah, I gotta. This guy is so funny in a way, peculiar funny that he's. I don't care if I'm right for it or not. The way he thinks is wild." So I started reading books about it, factual, historical situations that he'd been in, and also realized that he was a proscenium freak. You know, he could be, you know, just kind of in the dumps all day. He would even hide part of the day from his family and then come out at dinner time. He was making notes and doing whatever his thing in closed door. But he was a proscenium freak in that he would, come out and go, hey, yeah, and make like life was great. And then they could see, go back in there and go back into his, whatever his world was, And I just thought, oh, God, that's so fascinating,
And then you got nominated, your 5th Emmy nomination.
Yeah.
Playing Ronald Reagan. So
he had Golden Globe.
Yep.
And yeah, but the thing is, you remember we got, if you know that, we got 30,000 negative emails to CBS from the young Republicans. And there was a real thing. We were destroying this guy. And I didn't see anything destructive really about it at all. I was just seeing a guy who was effective and peculiar in doing it, And CBS finally caved, and they owned Showtime.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it went from 100 million possible viewers to 4 million possible viewers, or whatever the number is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you didn't pay for Showtime, you didn't get to see it, So, yeah. So a lot of people still have never seen it,
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing it. And I thought it was great. And
Nancy Davis was good. She was good.
Yeah.
Really good for Nancy. Yeah. I can't think of who else might have done a little bit. And she kind of had the look too,
She definitely had the look. She was perfect.
Yeah.
So, and then, another TV series that you did for 4 seasons, Life in Pieces, which is completely different from Pensacola, completely different from Hotel, completely different from Marcus Welby. So why was Life in Pieces great for you at that stage, and how much fun and how rewarding was it for you for that series?
Yeah, I had been sitting around for a couple of, I always figure you do a series and you got a 5-year cool off period until they forget who you were and they can accept who you now want to be or can be or are. And this show, I read it and I started laughing and I wondered, I didn't get it at first why I was laughing. I said, this is my dad. My dad used to, at 5 o'clock, he would, as I said, he was prolific at a lot of things. He was a brilliant engineer. He was a great cook. But at 5 o'clock, he would make his Mai Tai with the umbrella and the piece of pineapple and by 5:30, he was just kind of silly, just kind of silly and never drunk. I never saw him stumble or anything. But us 4 kids, we were 4 children, we started playing comedy routines with him, and he thought we were serious, and we just had the most fun with his drinking as opposed to a lot of families where the father's drinking and ruining everything. That didn't happen with us. And since that we have the most provocative, awful sense of humor, I'm probably the most contained of everybody. Like I keep saying to my brother, you can't say that. You can call me and say it to me, but you can't ever say that in public, And it's like Chris Rock gets away with murder and even bad. Eddie Murphy broke ground, and those guys were amazing. Anyway, that's not my forte, of course, but the humor we love. And so I saw my dad in this role, and the problem was there's a cast of 11. I didn't ever feature. I'd always been the protagonist in everything in television. And now I'm going to be one of a cast of 11, no matter how they build. And it ended up, they would kind of advertise me and Diane, but in the end, we would be, in the credits would be and Jim Brolin and Diane, squeezed. But they had me, the character was a haberdasher. And I said, that's so boring. How many coats you going to make? How many things are not going to fit? Let's make him a 747 airline pilot. And nobody to this day can imagine how anybody ever let him in the cockpit.
Yeah, yeah.
that he's so forgetful.
That's right on point.
And even in a lot of scenes, I had the Mai Tai in my hand, So if it fit, that, okay, this is a really serious moment. We've got a problem. We got to solve it. But give me a Mai Tai for my hand, so they'll begin to see that he's just a little loopy today. And all of those scenes that were just probably recognizable to all of us, that our grandpa or grandma, who was just getting a little airy-fairy, I got to do all that. I wanted to express that comedic side that us kids all did for years and years, and nobody would ever hire Jim Brolin for a comedy. So I said, I'm grabbing this. And what happened was, sometimes I'd have to come in for 3 hours. Sometimes they need me 1-2 days a week. So that was the trade-off. That's kind of nice because, I like it out here, me and the ocean and the birds and the surfboard.
Well, listen, this is exactly like at this stage, when you look back on this career that started, with Bus Stop in 1961, and, you're voicing one of the characters in the new Buzz Lightyear movie. And your career is absolutely still going strong. And you've just really adapted, and done so many different things. Do you have a philosophy that help you adapt to the changes and the ups and downs of this business, so you can always, I can't do this anymore, but I could do that. It's really incredible, that you have really just keep going and are still so busy. But what has been your philosophy and your ability to adapt and, survive?
Well, during the pandemic, we all slowed down a bit, but had there been some activity somewhere, I would have worked out a safe way to do it. But, but I want to protect my wife and people around me by, if I get it, me, I go, well, I get over it, but you carry it to somebody else, that's a danger. We've holed up a lot here. And as a matter of fact, I did Sweet Tooth series. Yep. Mm-hmm. Became number one in Netflix worldwide, number one series. And now we've got next season coming up. And Robert called me up and said, you're doing the narration. And I said, and I'm thinking, listen, I've done over many years, I've done so many tapes for voiceover. I wanted to do a Dodge commercial. I wish I never told you about the Dodge commercial. I'll tell you about that in a second. But I wanted to do, anyway, all these years, I have been wanting to do voiceover, some kind of thing. And so he calls and said, I want you to do Sweet Tooth, and you got to call Warner's people and work it out with them. And Warner said, no, we don't want him. And, that's not the deal we want to make. And he said, he called him up and said, I want him. That's all. So I did it. And then the next thing, I'm getting a call from Disney for the last franchise picture was Toy Story 4. It did $1.2 billion. Mm-hmm. And they've never really featured, I don't think they've ever featured Buzz Lightyear.
Correct.
In their movies. It was,
right. It was Woody.
Sheriff Woody, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so now this thing, if you've seen any of the film on it, it is spectacular looking, but it's a space movie. Mm-hmm. It's an animated space movie. And I can't tell you yet what I did in it, but I'm, Chris Evans is the one lead, and then also in it.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing. And they're calling me, getting ready to go and promote it. And by the way, all of these things, I did the Pixar, the Disney movie down at a studio near Disney, but everybody's masks and the room sprayed and everything. But all of the Sweet Tooth stuff, they sent a portable studio to me, a tripod and a screen, and I set it up downstairs here and did 8 hours of narration on 8 different times.
Wow. Yeah.
Without going down there, it was quite fun to do at home but then you get the earphones on, you got the director, you got the whole recording team in your earphones, and what I thought I'd knock off in 15 minutes turned into 3 sweaty hours because they keep saying, "Oh, try this, try that," and they did the same thing with Pixar. But it's quite fun. It's a real job. It's not like you just go and record a voiceover in your phone and email it. It's a sweaty 3 hours, and you try to, again, get into, in the Pixar thing, a character I wasn't allowed to read or really know about. I just know the parameters of it.
Oh, I see. I see what they're doing there. Gotcha.
Yeah. They want it to be a bit of a surprise.
And it's going to be a surprise even to you. Well, Jim, as we wrap up this conversation, to all the SAG-AFTRA members watching this conversation, what advice do you have for aspiring actors and performers, especially coming from someone who has just had so much great success on the big screen, the small screen, and elsewhere?
Well, I know so many actors that have or have not, or have sort of tried to, ask me directly, or just tried to get the information without looking like they need the information. What do you do? And my answer would get up on stage, get into a workshop where you can get hammered by all these people that some you'll like, some you won't like. They'll all have comments about you. You'll have to work hard during the day with whoever you're doing your scenes with. You may not like the partner you work with. Just do it. And there was a portion there where I was in a different class Monday through Friday. And that was early on when I signed at Fox, when I had some money to do it. Now I think some of these classes are a little too expensive, but do as much as you can to get on with it. And don't take another vocation, but work as many jobs as you can just to get the money to pay for everything and live, somewhat decently. And drop your mode of living. You don't need all that stuff. Sunshine and a good sandwich every day is all you need.
That's great advice. That is great advice. And this was a great conversation. James Brolin, it has been an absolute pleasure and honor and so much fun talking with you about your amazing career. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your work. And can I say, just keep doing what you are doing.
Well, I have no idea what's going to go on next, but that's kind of what's so wonderful about it, Like I say, I got 4 films up for financing, and each one I think is very viable, but no takers so far. So, but that's how we began. Well,
this is just the beginning. This is absolutely just the beginning, and those financiers, get James Brolin on the phone right away. So thank you again, James. And thank you everyone for watching this SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversation at Home, this career conversation with James Brolin. Thank you so very much. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for a good time.